Okay, so let me start. I've started a recording already. Today is session number 2. Today is July 25th, 2020, Saturday, and we're here for writing workshop number 2. Our topic today is personal statements. Like what we were just saying earlier, whether you're kind of thinking about writing down or documenting a time of your life, or you're high school student or college student aiming to apply for college or grad school, today is a really great follow-on topic to our first session, finding your narrative. But today we'll be focusing a little bit more about writing your achievement and stuff. So my name is Carrie Young. I am the program director for Cupertino Library Foundation, and I'm focusing on specifically both education and arts and culture. And so this is a very exciting new program that we are doing virtually, especially during this pandemic. So writing and arts really are recognized as tools for us to heal in the time of trauma and pain. And so I think this is a fantastic way of bringing the communities together, and then also maybe work on something new and exciting, and focus on personal development and sharing your work with the community as well. So the workshop goals, is that we're hoping this is as very collaborative and interactive. And everyone is here to learn. Even I learned a lot in our sessions as well, through our lecture on Kita and Ria, and also from everyone as well. So keep an open mind and have a pen and paper, or have your computer handy, opening that Word or Google Doc. So get ready to write, and there's no right or wrong answer, and just the beginning and more good times to come. And I wanted to share a little bit about our lecturer on Kita and Ria. Ria is a student at Monte Vista High School, and Ankita is currently a student at UC Berkeley. She's studying biology and creative writing. And so they are actually both authors of 2 published books. And it's really fantastic, hearing about their journey of how they love to write and eventually into publishing. And we will be having that in session number 4, where they will share with us how to share the work that you've done and with the world. Either it's through social media or finding outlets to share that, or even publishing it. So she will definitely walk us through their journey and through that as well. So very last quick note before I turn it over is today's overarching prompt. So again, today's specific topic is on personal statement. So writing about your accomplishments, events. Sometimes we are shy in terms of highlighting what we do, and it's really hard to find that balance of trying to highlight what you've done really, really well without seeming like you're boasting. So Rian and Kita will share with us a little bit in terms of understanding yourselves and others, and go from there. All right, without further ado, Rian and Kita.
So as Carrie mentioned, while we're focusing on the personal statement, we kind of think that these ideas can be applicable for any kind of personal essay or writing that you want to do about yourself or even about other people. So we believe that the first step to kind of attacking the personal statement is brainstorming.
Yeah, so like Ankita just said, brainstorming is, we feel like, the very first step of this whole process. So discovery is a really important step to kind of get engaged into your writing and as the initial stages. And I think a common mistake that people make is they just start writing before, without engaging in any creative thinking beforehand. And what we both believe in is that engaging in that type of creative thinking, it really helps to pair seemingly unrelated things together and actually really define your statement in the writing. So one of the best tools for brainstorming at the beginning are free writes. So the idea behind a free write is basically to write nonstop. And it's a way to just get all your thoughts onto the paper. So, it's an opportunity for you to kind of turn off your rational thinking and try to tune into kind of your unconscious and get your thoughts onto the paper. So one of the most important things is that, honestly, punctuation, grammar, syntax, all of these, they don't really matter when you free write. So you shouldn't be, rereading or thinking about grammar. You should just get all your thoughts out onto the paper and just don't pause.
So we're going to have an exercise where you can try this out, and we're still thinking about our overarching prompt, which is think about an important moment that changed your life and reflect on it. This is super vague. It can be anything from an amazing coffee you had this morning that woke you up to the world, or a formative moment you had in high school, but we would like you to kind of reflect on this and just free write. And we're going to time you for 3 minutes. This is just nonstop writing. We don't want you to reread or check your spelling or your grammar. Just kind of be led by your thoughts. And if you get stuck, just either keep repeating the last word you wrote or keep writing, keep going until a fresh thought kind of emerges.
So yes, I think Carrie will be setting a timer, and you guys can go ahead and get started, and we will let you know.
Okay, starting timer now. And I'll let everybody know when we have 1 minute left.
Definitely, if you feel free to share any of these phrases or words in the chat and why you specifically like them. And again, our prompt was pretty vague, so it can be about absolutely anything, whatever you wrote. Just feel free to share it.
Yeah. And we're going to move on, but we'll go back and read some of the things in the chat if you guys want to.
Definitely, yeah.
So yeah, obviously this might seem difficult at first if you've never rewritten before. I think it's normal to feel that way, but I think, as with anything with practice, you might feel more comfortable with it. It's important to kind of try doing this several times and repeating this and seeing what different things come out. Making these kinds of associations might help you identify a topic or a series of different ideas. I know I read Ray Bradbury's book on like creative writing, and he mentions that he makes these free association lists to kind of help him come up with a structure to many of his stories and his essays. So it might be good to try having a focused free write session where you continue to kind of come up with these phrases and a structure in the end.
Yeah, so this is just a very, I think personally, a great resource and tool that everyone can use for their free write. So it's called the Most Dangerous Writing App. So we actually, I think we put the link in the chat if you guys would like to check it out. So anyone just on your laptop or phone, you can just go to the website, and what this kind of platform provides is you can choose a prompt on your own, like beforehand, or if you just want to write about anything, you can choose a certain given amount of time. So if you look at the picture, you can choose 3 minutes or up to an hour even. And the goal is just to keep writing. So if you stop writing for more than 5 seconds, the catch is that all your work will be deleted. So it might sound a bit stressful, but it is definitely motivation to keep on writing for the given amount of time that you've chosen. So, it's a way to kind of combat writer's block if you're stuck on ideas. But honestly, I think it's just a great way to just get your thoughts out on the paper, just write it out. And the good thing is, like, if you're able to write continuously, everything is saved. So you can go back, reread, pick out the phrases you like, and maybe construct your statement based off of those phrases. So yeah, I think it's a great resource. And just like the exercise we did, if you enjoyed that, or maybe if that was hard for you, I would suggest just checking out this app. And just anytime you feel like you want to have a break in the day, you can just go ahead and try it out. I think it's a pretty fun activity.
All right, so now we're going to talk about next steps, which is outline and first draft of your essay. So you're basically what we want you to do is kind of pick out a narrative structure from what you circled or underlined out of your free write. So oftentimes this process of crafting a storyline can seem really difficult at first, which is why we recommend outlining. I think a lot of people work in different ways. Some people work better if they don't have an outline and they can just explore freely. Personally, I kind of like having just a general structure of like an idea flow, but we would like you to kind of try this out of your free write that you've done. So we're going to give you 5 minutes to kind of utilize some of the phrases that you've picked out, or some of the phrases that you didn't, and try to create a rough, short outline. It can be in any format that you want. You can even start kind of writing a draft out of what you have so far, if you're not really like an outlining person. But yeah, we would love for you to do this and keep thinking of the overarching prompt, which is the moment that changed your life or led to, personal discovery.
Yeah, definitely. So if you feel like there's just maybe not enough phrases in your free write, or you're missing something, you can obviously like add these in, but we'd like you to try your best to kind of start off from what you brainstormed and wrote previously. So I think Carrie will set a timer for 5 minutes, and so yes, good luck.
5 minutes, and I'll let you guys know when we're 1 minute left. We have about a minute left. Okay, guys, let's return back.
All right, so I hope that went well for everyone. And I know that that step may have been a little challenging or it felt tough for sure. But I think the exercises, the past two that we did, I think they're great starting points for any writing process. And the first draft is always, a start. So the next thing that we're going to look at is revision in the writing process.
Yeah, so revision kind of involves just a serious second look at your first draft. Often it's kind of a remodeling process. It's a good idea, I think, to give yourself some time away from your first draft and kind of do something else for a little bit before you come back and look at it with fresh eyes. It's important to fine tune the things that you already have. Check for consistency, flow, and logic. And definitely the flow part of that is, I would say, reading it out loud. I know sometimes on Macs, you can get your Mac to read it for you, which is fun. You can also have someone else read it. Looking at it from a fresh perspective is definitely always a very good idea. And we would say that sometimes you can still use your outlining format or even your brainstorming process to generate new ideas if you're feeling stuck and if you're feeling that you need to widen your scope of your essay.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, some of the questions that you can ask yourself when you're revising your draft is, does the piece carry your intended tone? So you need to think about the audience that you're intending your essay to be read by. So whether it's just a personal statement or this is a memoir for something, just always have your audience in mind, and this should really influence your intended tone. Another question is, does the second sentence follow naturally from the first? So this is kind of the flow that Ankita was talking about. So it's something you can hear when you read it out loud, or maybe even when you just read it by yourself. And so this is about, transitions between paragraphs that demonstrate a logical flow of ideas. So that's something you should think about during revision. And another thing also, like I mentioned, the transitions between paragraphs. So it's really helpful, I think, to read it out loud and go through and, honestly, highlighting every word or phrase that kind of seems off, or, you're a little unsure about it. Going through that and then looking back, it really helps during this process. So I think what Ankita mentioned was a good point, that you need kind of a break from your draft. I think if you work continuously on it for a long time, everything just kind of sounds the same. You can't really tell what's off or not. So I would recommend definitely taking a break from the draft and then coming back. But these are kind of the suggestions that we had for the revision process.
So now we'd like to do a revision exercise, and we're going to follow our own advice and give you some breaks from whatever you've been working on. So we have this short paragraph, and we're going to assume that this is a response to our overarching prompt, which, if you need a reminder, was discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. So this response is, this summer my uncle gave me a job at the bakery. My uncle has worked at his bakery for 15 years. Every morning, he wakes up at 5 to prepare for the day. My uncle lives in the apartment right above the bakery. Often there's still flour on his hands or face, even when he's done for the day. It was hard for me to work at the bakery at first, but I got used to it. So we'd like to give you, let's say, 3 minutes to let you revise this. And originally we were going to go into breakout rooms, but I think we can just do this in the main room where we'll have people, you can share in the chat, or you can share out loud, share your revisions and kind of talk about why you made these revisions.
And we will also be working on this. So we will revise this, and then as we share, like, you guys just feel free to say it in the chat or read it out loud. And I think Carrie will set a timer.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Thirty more seconds. All right, everyone, let's come back.
So yeah, feel free to keep working on this as we share our example. But okay, so our revision was, this summer, my uncle gave me a job at the bakery. I've never worked at a bakery before, so this was a foreboding prospect, and I wasn't sure if I felt up to it. I wasn't used to the early hours or the everlasting flour that seeped into my clothes. Slowly, though, I became used to my uncle's demanding schedule. By the end of the difficult but delicious and pastry-filled summer, my uncle told me he was proud of the hard work I had done.
Yeah, so I think one thing that we really changed during this revision process is made it focusing on, you rather than the uncle. So if you look at this example that we read out loud before, it's really talking about the uncle rather than yourself. So I think the revision kind of statements that we wrote, it focuses on the journey that you took, how you grew as a person, what you learned from your experience. So that was just an example that we thought of, and we took it that way. There are definitely many different ways you can take this revision, and
you could focus on the uncle.
Definitely, yeah.
But if anyone wants to share their own examples, feel free.
Yeah, so I think let's see.
I think Carrie.
Oh, very nice. Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, I can read this. So I had a chance to work closely with my uncle at his bakery of 15 years this summer. He is so dedicated that his day starts at 5 every morning. He even lives in the apartment above the bakery, and sometimes it's hard to tell whether he is done with work or not because he always has flour on his face and hands. I have grown to love working at the bakery. Yeah, I think this is great because the sentence structure, it really varies much more than the original example we said. I think that helps to engage the reader, definitely.
Yeah, and I also feel like this focuses on the uncle and kind of makes his character more clear. You kind of feel like you're directly looking at the uncle in this. So yeah, thank you so much, Carrie.
And everyone, you can always feel free to share your examples or thoughts. But
yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to share super quick before we move on? Let's go.
All right, so let's see. This move here.
So we're just gonna recap some of the essential elements that we think are pretty important to have in a personal essay.
Okay. So the very first thing, so varying your sentence structure and length. So just like Carrie's example, I think that variation really helps to engage the reader and bring more excitement to your statement. So compared to, the first example we said and like our revision and Carrie's revision, I think we really helped to engage the reader by changing the sentence structure. So rather than, just keeping it like set ABC, we changed it a lot, and I think it really helps to add a lot of more tension as well. And reading out loud is also, like we mentioned before, really helpful to help figure out like which parts in your sentence are kind of off or it doesn't sound right. So I'm going to go ahead and read two different examples. So, our family visited Canada and Alaska last summer to find some Native American art. In Anchorage stores, we found some excellent examples of soapstone carvings, but we couldn't find a dealer selling any of the woven wall hangings we wanted. We were very disappointed when we left Anchorage empty-handed. This is the first example. And our second one, our family visited Canada and Alaska last summer to find some Native American art, such as soapstone carvings and wall hangings. Anchorage stores had many soapstone items available. Still, we were disappointed to learn that wall hangings, which we had especially wanted, were difficult to find. Sadly, we left empty-handed. So
so I think the emotions that we get from reading these two paragraphs kind of differ. The first one, it's pretty straightforward. You get the information across, but you don't really get any emotion or feeling from it. And I think the second one, there's a little bit of tension, especially when they leave sadly we left empty-handed until the end. So you're keeping the reader engaged until the very end and kind of creating that tension through sentence length. That's from Purdue University. So some other general tips, emphasize important parts at the end of the sentence. So think of each of your sentences as a kind of mini narrative, and they're each building up on each other to build the overarching narrative. So placement of information is often pretty important to, again, keep the reader engaged until the very end of the paragraph. So here's a short example. Humanity has hardly advanced in fortitude since that time, though it has advanced in many other ways. Since that time, humanity has advanced in many ways, but it has hardly advanced in fortitude. So the second example kind of feels a little bit more dramatic, and you're getting that kind of punch at the end. So this whole idea of placement of information and having your sentence be a story within itself might be important.
All right, so another general tip that we're looking at when you write is to avoid wordiness and cliches. So there should be no unnecessary words or phrases when you're writing your personal statement. So a question you need to ask yourself is, will taking out this word or phrase affect the information in the sentence? So avoiding unnecessary wordiness is something that we call purple prose.
Yeah, the wordiness is the purple prose.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to read this example. Macbeth was very ambitious. This led him to wish to become King of Scotland. The witches told him that this wish of his would come true. The King of Scotland at this time was Duncan. Encouraged by his wife, Macbeth murdered Duncan. He was thus enabled to succeed Duncan as king. So this is about 51 words, and then I'm going to go ahead and read another example. Encouraged by his wife, Macbeth achieved his ambition and realized the prediction of the witches by murdering Duncan and becoming King of Scotland in his place. So pretty much the same information between these two examples were relayed, except one is in 26 words and another is in 51. So it really shows how kind of connecting lots of these together and taking out the unnecessary words, how it helps to make the sentence flow a lot more.
Yeah, you can try and say more and less. I think keeping things concise is also important for keeping the reader engaged. Unless you have a different goal, unless you're writing something that's a little bit more like, literary and you want to expand on your descriptions and imagery. But yeah, this is something that's quite important.
Yeah, so, we just covered some general tips, but there's definitely a lot more details that we can work on. But so like we mentioned, the three main steps kind of we believe are, brainstorming, outlining a first draft, and then the revision process. And the personal statement is really all about brainstorming and getting all those thoughts and ideas just out onto the page. Outlining is definitely a great method to help narrow down your thoughts and to kind of organize the structure of your statement and writing. Definitely, different methods work for different people. So if you just like to go in head first and start writing, I think that's also a great way to start your first draft. And whatever you do during revision, it's super important to focus on some of the elements that we discussed. So the elements of sentence structure, construction, and word choice will really help to make your essay and statement more compelling. Yeah.
So for next time, we're going to really zoom in on this whole revision process because there are many schools of thoughts about revision, and we're excited to kind of talk about that. Then the workshop after that will be about the publishing process. So our next meeting is going to be on Saturday, August 8th, and we're meeting at 2:30 p.m. Rather than 10:30 a.m. And if you'd like us to read one of your writing samples, or actually, we're also thinking of including some samples in our revision workshop where we can maybe collectively workshop a piece. Feel free to send it in our email, which is in the chat.
We've definitely been getting some, people have been sending in some examples, and we've definitely loved providing feedback and reading through those. And I think we would love to read any of the works that you guys want to send in, or if you want us to, just read something, we would love to do that.
So I think we do have a little bit of time for Q&A, right? So feel free to kind of jump in or send any questions on the chat screen. And I've muted everyone, so if you want to chat, just kind of unmute yourself and you can start. But before we get any questions, maybe we can just do a little bit of a free chat. So as we said earlier, Ankita is a college student and Ria is applying for college this fall. So do you have any recommendations or suggestions for any students who may be starting to write their college essays on how to approach writing a personal statement?
Definitely, yeah. So I'm applying for med schools right now, and the personal statement process for that is quite long and involved. I think when you're doing applications, it's really helpful to have a schedule and a plan. It's really important to plan ahead of time, especially if you know your deadlines and your general timelines. I guess deadlines, that goes for anyone who's writing on a deadline, but it's important to kind of give yourself the space to think creatively. So account for that time that you're going to be generating ideas and giving yourself a break and thinking of more ideas. So yeah, I would say planning and scheduling, these things really help me, even if my creative process is a little bit more free and not on a schedule. It's important to kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, for me, I think it's been an interesting process, working on personal statement and essays for colleges. I think in school, we don't really get the opportunity to work on creative writing as much. I think I have written lots of informative essays, argumentative, persuasive, but we're never really taught about, free writing, creative writing, expressing yourself. And I think through applications, I think it's a great way to explore yourself and who you are as a person. And I think something that we mentioned in our first workshop was one way to improve your writing is to read great works and personal essays. And I think that's one of the ways that has really helped me, because by reading examples of personal essays that are just so well written and crafted, it really gives me a perspective of that creative writing that I never really got during school. And I think I did share a couple of books in the chat for personal statement and writing that personally I thought were very helpful, and you can definitely feel free to check it out. And we probably probably definitely have more books to recommend. So if anyone is interested in that, you can shoot us an email, and we would love to provide that insight as well.
I really like your tip about reading other people's personal statements and personal essays. And I think that lends very well for someone who might be writing about their memoirs, right? About their lives. So that's a great way to get inspirations from reading others' works. Do you have any personal favorites about bibliographies, or just anything you want to share? Or anyone who's read any great bibliographies that they wanted to share, that's totally awesome as well.
Yeah, for me in particular, I love kind of reading short fiction, strangely. So there's a lot of collections of like Great American Short Fiction that has a lot of different authors and styles, but it's really interesting to see how people can craft a narrative and focus in on a character, because when you're writing a personal essay, you're really kind of making yourself into a character, and you need to make yourself compelling, and you need to give yourself an arc within your essay that's really compelling. So yeah, strangely, I kind of look to short fiction for ways to do that. It's also interesting to kind of just look at different writing styles. That whole thing that we had about sentence construction variants, I guess someone like Hemingway would disagree because he uses short, concise sentences all the time. So just looking at different modes of expression that people have when they write about other people is really interesting for me.
It's a great way to really find your writing style as well.
Yeah.
One thing that I had for today is kind of creating that drama in tension, which personally I find very hard to do. But I read a book this year. It's called Educated by Tara Westover, and it's a really great book. But it's about a girl who grew up, I guess memoir. It's about a girl who grew up from a survivalist Mormon family, who was homeschooled by his parents, but eventually went on to study at Cambridge and really well-renowned university, and found out how different the life or the knowledge that she's been getting homeschool is so different from the reality. And I'm highlighting this book because I feel like she does bring out the tension and drama really, really well, and it's probably one of the best I've read in the recent years. So wanted to recommend that for anyone who wanted to try it out.
Definitely. And you can put that in the chat, I think, for sure. That I think that'd be great. Yeah.
I've got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Like in that Macbeth example, when you cut from 52 words to 26, it seems that you were writing for a college graduate audience. Now you write a lot for middle schoolers. So my question is, can you be too dense and try and feed information to the audience at an intensity that they can't quite get? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I think we have to be really aware of, especially particularly when we're thinking about writing for, say, a middle school audience. We want to put in enough description imagery without overwhelming it. So it's definitely something that we have to think about, keeping it kind of concise, and I wouldn't say sparse, but maybe choosing things specifically. I know last workshop we kind of talked about that specificity thing. That's also really important, I think. Sometimes it's easier and it creates an image more clearly if you just choose some specific details to include in your writing, rather than throwing everything in like a dense kind of package. So
yeah, I think definitely like the audience matters a lot, like middle school versus like writing for, like colleges or undergrad, like definitely like the example that we provided, like cutting that down. If the audience was for, like middle school students, I think definitely the example would have been different. I think probably broken up into 2 sentences so people can, catch all the information. And yeah, so I think that's kind of another thing, like when you're revising that we talked about, I think it's important to think about like the tone and sentence structure based off of your audience. So that's a really good point though. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Ray Bradbury was one of my favorite authors. And I think that one of his collections of short stories is called Minutes to Midnight. And one time I had a chance to meet Ray Bradbury in a small group. And this was when I was much younger, about half the age I am now. And at that time I was interested in writing, although I was working as an engineer. I was interested in writing fiction. And I said, you know, would he read anything I sent him? He said, if you write 10 short stories and send them to me, I'll read them. Well, I never got around to writing 10 short stories. So,
It's a
so
hard
out of way, you know, he was welcoming, but I had to show an intensity of interest
Yeah.
enough to write the 10 stories.
That's
That
demanding.
is awesome, though. I
Yeah.
think that's so cool. I know Ray Bradbury mentioned that in order to kind of get into the habit of writing, he wrote 1,000 words or more every single day. So he's so prolific and amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for this.
Yeah.
It was so great.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad you enjoyed it. And next time we're going to be talking about revision. And I guess, yeah, that's definitely something we'll consider revising to different audiences.
And Keita, since you're usually Berkeley, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went there for my graduate work.
Oh, really?
And the particular event that changed my life was receiving a letter from the Dean for Graduate Studies or doctoral programs from EE, Electrical Engineering, telling me, make an appointment to see me to discuss your future at this university.
That's terrible.
It's after I had failed the doctoral exam the second time.
Oh, no.
And so anyway, and the outcome of that is what changed my life. So,
Wow. What a story. I'm so glad that you're writing about
so the underlying thing was discuss your future at this university.
It's a great topic.
So I have a couple more questions. So in terms of writing a personal statement for college, for example, I think the difference of that to a personal memoir is that sometimes you're constrained by the number of words, of maximum words. So that's why you probably will want it to be a little bit more concise. And sometimes it's dictated by like the prompt that was given to you, right? So I guess question for Ankita and Ria, for someone who might be rewatching this in the future, writing their personal statements, like how much time do you kind of allocate in rewriting it, just so for someone who's planning embarking on their personal statement?
Yeah, definitely. So what you said is very true. It definitely differs on what you're writing about. For personal statements, I think normally, like Ria can definitely speak to this because she's in this process right now where she is doing draft after draft of revisions. But you want to talk about your personal?
Yeah, so I think like the constraints you talked about, like, you know, word limit and like an overarching prompt that's very specific. I think honestly, when you're starting off this process, I think it's really important just to forget about those constraints for now. So obviously, like if there's a prompt you need to follow, I think have that in the back of your mind when you're drafting. But I think bringing those constraints in, that should be kind of during the revision process rather than your first draft. So, you know, when you get started, like the hardest thing is to get started. So I think once you get started and you kind of get into that flow, then after you kind of get out that first draft or outline, then you can, you know, come back to it and revise and, you know, edit it to fit under those constraints. And definitely, like, they're hard, like the word limit, like getting all that information you want out underneath the word limit. I know that's a challenge and I'm definitely experiencing that right now. But I think some of the tips like we covered, I think that's also like applicable to the personal statement. I think you can honestly use that to get lower that word count as well. So definitely it's a challenge, but it's something that I think we're all capable of, and it's good to explore.
Good to spend time on it.
Definitely.
any tips or just from everybody, I guess, that you wanted to share with the group? Or has anyone started writing about either a personal statement or a memoir that they wanted to talk about their process, challenges that maybe you want the group to brainstorm with you? Maybe I'll start. I've been because of last session of the Finding Your Narrative, I started thinking about writing my own elevator pitch, about who I am, professionally, and also my role at the Cupertino Library Foundation. If someone were to ask me, what is your passion in life? Can I answer it in 30 seconds or less? And I'm also kind of taking that in today's session, just putting that into the framework too. How do I explain, who I am, what I do, what I'm passionate about in this. So I'm gonna try to maybe write a longer version of that, and maybe we can all share and utilize that, in next session for the rewriting process. But this is a really great program, and I feel like it lends itself really well as a continuous series. So I hope to see you guys coming back again, and let anyone know that might be interested about this program as well.
Definitely. Yeah, that was a great example, Carrie. And
yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, we hope that you maybe generated some good ideas, some stuff that you can run with. And next time, maybe we'll think about revising all of this and, making it into a solid narrative.
Yeah, and definitely check out in the chat, we put some of the books that were suggested. I think Carrie put in the book, and also we have our email if you guys want to send us anything. And I also put in the link to the resource that I gave for the free write, where it's a little stressful, but I think it'll pay off in the end, where you can write for a given amount of time and look back on it. I think that's a great exercise. So hopefully you guys can take that into your future too.
Ria, you seem so mature for a high school student. Are you going to consider applying to Yale?
I don't know.
I'm a Yale grad, so.
Wow, Yale and Berkeley, that's awesome.
Okay.
Well, I will send out a follow-on email. I will have all of the links in the books that Ria and Ankita shared today, and then also a recording of today's session. Once it becomes available, I'll send that out to everyone in the email list as well. So if you didn't get an email from us, send us an email so that I'll include you. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us today and spending your morning with us. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next time.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming.